The morning started like every other Thursday. Sunlight slipped lazily through the kitchen blinds, casting stripes across the polished counter. The coffee maker hummed, filling the air with the familiar, bitter scent that usually brought me peace. Our youngest was humming along to a cereal commercial playing on the tiny screen above the stove. My husband, Daniel, sat across from me, half buried behind the Wall Street Journal, his spoon rhythmically tapping the side of his bowl. To anyone looking in, we were the picture of American domestic normalcy. But lately, normal didn't feel right anymore. Daniel had been distant, still here, still present, but somehow, not really. He smiled at the kids but not with his eyes. His phone, once left casually on the counter, now stayed face down, tightly held. I'd chalked it up to stress. Work had been demanding, he said. He needed space, he said. Then came the moment. Our daughter, Ellie, 6 years old, mid-bite of her banana, turned to me with wide, innocent eyes and said, "Why did Auntie Danielle sleep in Daddy's room last week when you were gone?" Spoon midair. My body froze. The room didn't fall silent, my ears did. Everything else kept moving, but I stopped. I wanted to laugh it off. Kids say things. They mix things up. Maybe she dreamed it, maybe she misremembered. Surely, she meant something else. But that seed. It rooted deep. I spent the rest of the morning pretending. Pretending to be fine. Pretending the comment hadn't carved a hole right through me. By the time I got the kids off to school and returned to the now empty house, I was shaking. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop. But my hands had other plans. His phone was locked, of course, but the shared laptop wasn't. I opened tabs, scanned calendars, cross-referenced texts and photos, what was still there and what wasn't. Deleted threads. Late-night call logs to Danielle. Receipts forwarded to his private email. A reservation at a hotel. Not far from home. A Thursday night. I'd been away at a conference. I stared at the screen. Nothing conclusive. But I didn't need conclusive. I needed confirmation. By noon, I texted Danielle, my supposed best friend, told her I needed to talk. Just us. She arrived that afternoon, wearing a soft pink sweater, makeup too perfect for a casual visit. She hugged me. Too long. Too tight. Like she already knew. We sat across from each other in the living room. Small talk evaporated quickly. I asked, "Tell me why my daughter thinks you were in my bedroom with my husband." She blinked. Tilted her head. "What are you talking about?" Her tone was calculated. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. She stalled. Deflected. "It's probably a misunderstanding. You know how Ellie is. Imaginative." I waited. Let the silence press on her. Then she sighed, as if I'd forced her hand. "It just happened," she said flatly. "He was lonely. You've always been so busy." No tears. No apology. Just cold, clean facts, like she was reading off a grocery list. My chest tightened. My fingers dug into the armrest. I couldn't breathe. I'd known this woman since college. She'd held my babies. She was in my wedding photos. "You've always been so busy." The words played back in my mind like a looped insult. I felt betrayed twice, by the man I married and the woman I once called sister. After she left, I sat alone on the couch, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. Not then. Later that night, I stood in the dark hallway outside our bathroom. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Like someone had reached in and taken pieces out of me without asking. I remembered birthdays he missed. How Danielle used to check in when I seemed upset. How I defended them both, ignored whispers, brushed off signs. I'd refused to be suspicious because I didn't want to be that wife. The paranoid one. But it wasn't paranoia. It was happening. Had been happening. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and let the numbness settle. No sobbing. Just an aching, still silence. That night, we had dinner. Daniel sat across the table, asking about Ellie's math test, cutting his chicken too neatly. I nodded, played along. Observed him like he was a stranger in my home. Because he was. I wasn't going to scream or throw plates. I was going to remember everything. I started writing in my journal after the kids went to bed. Not about pain, but about plans. What mattered now, my children, my dignity, and what I would not let them take from me. I listed accounts. Made a folder of documents. Checked balances. I wasn't preparing for a confrontation. I was preparing for extraction. The next day, I called a lawyer's office. Used a different name. Set a date. If they think I'll beg, I wrote in the journal, they've misread the quiet in me. I kissed Daniel goodnight that evening. Smiled when he mumbled about a work trip. I tucked the kids in, turned out the lights, played the role. But inside, I wasn't broken. I was sharpening. Later that week, just as I was starting to feel steady, I found something new. An envelope, plain white, no name. It had been slipped under my door sometime after dinner. Inside was a USB drive. A sticker on it read, "For your eyes only." I plugged it into the laptop, heart suddenly loud in my chest. And then I saw it. My hands went cold. My mouth opened, but no words came. I didn't blink. It took a second for the video to load. Long enough for me to want to pull the USB out and pretend I hadn't seen anything. But I didn't. I watched. There they were. Cormac and Honora. Sitting too close in what looked like a suite, cushioned chairs, dim lamps, too much wine. It wasn't just an affair. That would have been almost easier to stomach. This was a meeting. Casual, deliberate. Cormac's voice came through first. She's got no clue. I moved the last transfer this morning. Honora laughed. Not her usual laugh, the one she used when she played auntie to my kids, but something else. Sharper. She still thinks love means loyalty. Poor thing. He reached for her hand, squeezed it like a business partner sealing a deal. She'll never see it coming. The screen blurred for a moment. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even blinking. Just staring. Processing. I felt my jaw clench. My chest burned, but the tears didn't come. They had already stolen too much. They wouldn't get that too. This isn't betrayal, I whispered to no one. It's theft. Calculated theft. I closed the laptop. My hands didn't shake this time. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood at the sink, letting the silence surround me. The house was still. But everything inside me had shifted. I went back upstairs, opened our joint bank app. I started looking at the last few months. Transfers. Withdrawals. Something called Helios Holdings. Never heard of it. I opened another browser. Typed fast. Shell Company. Registered under an LLC in Nevada, commonplace to hide money. One of the names on the account? Honora Wells. It clicked. The odd business trips. The side eyes when I brought up Mom's estate. The pressure Cormac put on me to sign the prenup, said it was standard, just to protect both of us. His lawyer, Gideon, was a friend from college. Said I didn't need my own counsel. I was naive. Tired. In love. Love doesn't read fine print. Love signs, thinking that's trust. I picked up my phone and dialed Rick Bannister, friend of my father's. Retired now, but he'd helped me sort through estate paperwork years ago. I told him I needed someone who understood financial trails and how to trace them discreetly. You don't sound shaken, he said. I don't have time to be. They say love is blind, he said quietly, but financial records never lie. After I hung up, I sat on the couch and stared into the dark. I remembered a night years ago, Honora sitting beside me as I cried over Mom's stroke. She brought soup. She held my hand. She listened. Now, I see the questions she asked me back then, in a new light. Did your mom leave you everything? Do you know how the trust is structured? She didn't comfort me. She audited me. I felt something between nausea and rage. I blamed myself, but not as a victim, more like a general reviewing a failed battle plan. I gave away power thinking it was kindness. I let my guard down because that's what good wives, good friends, are told to do. Cormac came home late that night. He smiled, kissed me on the forehead. Rough day? I smiled back. Just tired. He poured himself a drink, flipped on the news. I watched him from across the room, noting every movement. He didn't suspect a thing. I excused myself, walked to the bedroom, and copied the USB files to 2 more drives. One went into a box I'd keep at a friend's downtown law office. The other would go into a safety deposit box tomorrow. Then I emailed an attorney, under a different name. Appointment set for Monday. He thinks I'm a pawn. But pawns reach the other side and become queens. In the morning, I called Mr. Levinson. He'd been my father's legal advisor for decades. Conservative, discreet, and old school in the way that made you feel like things would be handled with care. He met me at a quiet diner just outside town. I laid it all out, everything I'd seen, heard, suspected. He didn't flinch. Just sipped his coffee. When people plan this deep, he said, they think they're untouchable. But justice is a patient woman. Let her walk ahead of rage. We began outlining the timeline. I opened a new journal just for this. Dates. Transfers. Names. What I saw. What I heard. Every ugly truth went in. That night, I slept like I hadn't in weeks. Not because I was okay. Because I had direction. I woke up different. Not softer. Not numb. Just clear. There was a weight lifted. Not because the pain was gone, but because the purpose had arrived. I remembered my grandmother once saying, heartbreak makes better steel than fire. She was right. I started thinking like a strategist. If they could plan against me, I could plan around them. I bought a prepaid phone, activated it, and listed it under a different name. I opened a bank account in a state where Cormac had no ties. I found a therapist who specialized in high-conflict divorce, not to vent, but to stay sharp. At night, after the kids were asleep, I watched videos about asset protection and divorce law. I read up on financial abuse, quietly building an arsenal of knowledge. I wrote to myself, just one line that I reread every morning. You are not what they did to you. You are what you'll do next. And then I did something small but powerful. I logged into Cormac's work email. I had helped him set the password years ago. He never changed it. Not even after all this. I searched through recent threads. One subject line stood out, final steps before she signs. Sent just 30 minutes ago. The last message? She suspects nothing. 2 mornings later, I woke up to a notification on my burner phone, a signal message from an unknown number. No name, no profile photo, just a single line, check your files before they vanish. Attached were screenshots of property documents. I enlarged the first image. It was one of our joint investments, a vacation house outside Austin. But this version of the deed didn't have my name on it. It had been transferred quietly to a holding company in Panama. My pulse steadied, not quickened. This wasn't panic anymore, this was data. Cold, cruel data. Another file showed the same with our lake cabin, the one Cormac always said he'd fix up for retirement. Every line read the same pattern. My name erased. His signature neatly printed next to a timestamp dated 2 weeks ago. There were only 3 people who even knew about these properties: Cormac, me, and our financial advisor. Maybe someone inside felt guilty. Or maybe it was a warning. Either way, the message was clear: they weren't just taking my trust. They were taking my existence off the page. I stared at the message and whispered, they're not trying to hurt me, they're trying to erase me. The thought didn't come with tears or trembling. It came with a kind of quiet fire, the kind that burns slower but never dies out. I opened my files, digging through old property folders. My hands moved with purpose, like muscle memory had replaced fear. I pulled up every document Cormac and I had ever signed together. I needed patterns. Motives. History. And there it was, an email buried deep in an old folder from 2009. A property I bought before our marriage, a small duplex in Plano that had sentimental value. When I opened the deed, something was off. The notary stamp was smudged, but the signature wasn't mine. He'd transferred ownership, years ago, to one of his shell companies. The same one tied to Honora's fake business. I sat back, the weight of it hitting me like a quiet thunder. This wasn't just an affair or a financial betrayal. This was a structure. A strategy. A long con that started before I ever said I do. I remembered our honeymoon. The toast he made, to forever. I could still see the champagne bubbles, hear the clink of glasses. I smiled that night, believing him. Now I saw it differently, he toasted to forever with my money in his pocket. The realization wasn't rage anymore. It was focus. I thought about my mother, Evadne. She tried to warn me, in her quiet way. You don't have to fight a snake to be free of it, she once told me. Just stop sleeping in the same den. Back then, I thought she was talking about Honora's sharp tongue or her influence. I didn't realize she saw something deeper. Mothers don't always name the danger, they just leave breadcrumbs. I pulled out her old journal from the attic box, pages yellowed with time. On one page, written in her looping script, she loves him because she needs him to be good. I ran my fingers over the words and felt the ache of hindsight. She knew. She saw what I couldn't. That night, I started my own journal, not of pain, but of truth. I wrote for my daughter. For the day she might need to see that love and survival can live in the same woman. At dusk, Cormac came home. He carried flowers, lilies, my least favorite, though he'd never remembered that. He kissed my cheek like everything was fine. "Thought I'd surprise you," he said, setting the bouquet on the counter. Predators love routines. They hide inside the rhythm of normal. He poured wine, asked about my day, and suggested a weekend trip. "Just us," he said. "To reconnect." I smiled, nodding slowly. "That sounds nice." While he talked about coastal views and bed-and breakfasts, I was making lists in my head: passwords, accounts, lawyers, evidence. He called me babe again, a word he only used when he was managing me, not loving me. I played along. Let him think he was still the conductor. That night, I pretended to sleep. His breathing evened beside me, calm, sure. He thought he'd reset the balance. In the dark, I whispered to myself, "You have no idea who you're sleeping next to." The next morning, I met Mr. Levinson again. I laid out every new piece of evidence: the property transfers, the old forgery, the Panama shell. He studied it all quietly, nodding. "This isn't a mistake," he said. "It's a pattern of coercion. Financial abuse, fraud, deception, all provable." I nodded back. "Then let's make it undeniable." We reached out to a female attorney in New York who specialized in high-asset divorces. I didn't want a local name Cormac could manipulate. I wanted someone untouchable. "This isn't heartbreak anymore," I told Levinson. "This is war." I also started therapy, but not the kind that asks you to cry into tissues. I found someone who taught trauma recovery through strategy, how to turn emotion into leverage. That night, I placed a small recorder under the kitchen shelf. I didn't plan to trap him, I just wanted an archive. My own record of truth, unedited. Later, sitting at my desk, I made a list titled, "Things I Own That No One Can Steal." My integrity. My story. My daughter's respect. My mother's wisdom. And my clarity. For the first time in months, I wasn't grieving him. I was grieving the woman who believed him. I whispered, almost with relief, the lies didn't just end a marriage. They freed me. I decided to speak at a local real estate seminar for women. Anonymously. A story about trust, contracts, and survival, no names, no details, just truth told through lessons. My voice would be my first weapon. That night, as I prepared slides for my talk, my phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message. Same anonymous number. A single photo. Cormac and Honora standing inside a bank lobby. Both smiling, both holding a signed document. The caption read, "Tomorrow is transfer day." She still doesn't know. But I did know. And I was done playing fair. The gala had the kind of shine that only money could polish. I arrived just as the first glasses of champagne began to clink, the Charleston air still warm enough to hold its breath. The red maple napkin I'd folded myself was tucked neatly in my purse, a quiet symbol of how much I'd once cared about appearances. Inside, the ballroom glowed under chandeliers like frozen sunlight. Everyone looked polished, rehearsed, familiar. I moved through the crowd, nodding to people who had stopped using my name years ago. The Marin Family Foundation banners hung from every wall, all legacy and no love. When I reached my seat, I looked down expecting my usual place card, the one embossed in gold, Venice Marin. Instead, my eyes caught 4 black words printed in plain type, plus one of Talbot Marin. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand, but because I needed a second to steady the wave that hit. I wasn't a name anymore, just an accessory. A guest of a guest. Honora appeared before I could move, her perfume sharp, her dress a silver shimmer that caught every light in the room. She placed her hand on my shoulder. "You made it," she said, with a smile too wide to be real. "I always do," I replied, meeting her eyes. For a second, her smile faltered. She knew I saw through her, that I understood what being erased looked like. I sat down, folding the napkin across my lap, breathing through the tension in my chest. "They're testing me. I'll stay calm." The hum of conversation filled the air, all that wealth, all that noise. Then Talbot rose from his chair at the head of the table. He tapped his glass and the crowd fell silent. "Tonight," he announced, "we celebrate the future of Marin Holdings, a family built on innovation, trust, and legacy." The slideshow began. Photos of projects I'd designed flashed across the massive screen, layouts, models, renderings, all mine. But then the voiceover said, "Concept and execution by our creative visionary, Honora Wells." Applause thundered. My hands stayed perfectly still in my lap. Someone at the next table whispered, "She's just house help now." I smiled the way women do when they've been trained to swallow humiliation with grace. The music swelled, laughter filled the space, and I clapped along like it didn't matter. Hours later, when the lights dimmed and the ballroom emptied, I drove home in silence. The kind of silence that hums beneath the skin. Inside the house, I went straight to my office, turned on the lamp, and opened my laptop. The login page for our joint account appeared, routine as breathing. But the number that loaded wasn't. Almost zero. I stared at it, at the hollow space where years of work and trust had been. Transfers to shell accounts, coded names, offshore routes. Gone. Every cent. My father's voice echoed in my head, "Money's harder to track than a liar's promise." I copied the records, every transaction, every date. Screenshots, folders, encrypted drives. Proof was the only inheritance I had left. By morning, my phone rang. "Mother. You looked beautiful last night," she said, as if that mattered. "Honora really shined, didn't she?" "She did," I answered. "But I saw something else too." "Oh, Venice," she sighed, "don't do this. These events aren't about you. They're about the family." "Then let me ask you something," I said quietly. "Does the family value the woman who built their brand, or just the name behind the check?" Silence. She didn't like questions without an exit. "Appearances matter," she said finally. "Don't make this harder than it already is." "I'm not," I told her. "I'm just done pretending." I hung up before she could reply. By afternoon, I had a dozen documents spread across my desk, tax records, old filings, property deeds in Savannah. I saw the same names repeating. The same hands signing what wasn't theirs. I heard Cormac's voice from that recording, calm, smug, "She's too trusting." That memory didn't sting. It focused me. I called Mr. Levinson's contact, a forensic accountant who worked quietly, under the table. I used a false name. "I need everything," I told her. "Every transfer, every shell company, every offshore trail." Then I called Elise, my therapist. She answered on the first ring. "I don't want to talk about grief," I said. "I want to talk about strategy." "Good," she replied. "Then we'll start with boundaries." By dusk, I was standing on the balcony overlooking the Ashley River. The city lights danced on the surface, rippling like secrets. I could still hear echoes from last night's gala playing on my phone, the laughter, the applause. Honora's voice ringing above it all. I reached into my purse and touched the folded napkin. What once symbolized belonging now felt like armor. A vibration pulled me back, a text. Balance due, $2.3 million. Transfer within 72 hours. No signature. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered to myself, "You've mistaken silence for surrender." That night, after dinner, after every light in the house had gone dim, an email appeared in my inbox. No name. No subject. Just one line, "Download the attachment. Your move." I hesitated, then clicked. A PDF opened, Marin Trust, sealed 2009. I scrolled. The first page displayed a signature, mine. Dated before my wedding. My hands didn't shake. They stilled. Someone had used my name, my trust, my identity as the cornerstone of their empire. I leaned back, eyes fixed on the screen's glow. "They think I'm still playing by their rules," I said quietly. "They gave me the board. I'm about to rearrange it." The morning light in December felt thin, as if it was hesitant to shine. I sat at my desk in the study, the quiet of the house pressing in around me. The documents from Dad's estate were spread across the surface, wills, trusts, property deeds, all stuff I'd glanced at before but never opened fully. Today something made me open the envelope marked with his initials. No sender name, nothing else. I slid it open and found a letter and a bank transfer slip. $70,000, wired to an account in Monaco under the initials VM, and below that, "You deserve the truth." The words echoed. Dad used to say money can't buy love, but it exposes the lies. I remembered the voice, felt the lesson. I sat back, the chair creaking, and let the weight of the number settle. Gratitude mixed with dread. Hope flickered, maybe Dad believed in me, saw what I was missing. Then the door creaked upstairs and footsteps echoed in the hall. I closed the folder quietly, the paper rustling like a whisper in the room. The day had begun differently. In the quiet that followed, I reached for the old leather-bound journal stashed beneath a stack of papers in a drawer. It smelled of dust and old hope. I opened it to the earliest entry, from when Cormac and I had just started being us. The words spilled out, "He couldn't do this without you, sweetheart." I underlined it in my mind. I had written that. I had believed it. Entry after entry described late nights helping with startup strategy, praise for Honora's help. At the time I thought I was supportive. Now the irony cut sharp. I was more than supportive, I was inventor, backer, silent partner. One page stopped me cold. "If I disappear tomorrow, know that I gave everything." I remembered writing it late at night after a board meeting, drained, unsure. The ink dried in a moment I thought was ordinary. Reading it now, I felt shame. Then clarity. This journal was not simply nostalgia. It was proof of my work. My worth. Uncredited. I closed the book slowly. The words of the past were not just memories, they were evidence. Late afternoon found me tracing lines on my laptop. The Monaco account, the shell company, the VM initials matching my own name. I remembered Dad's speech, "Legacy isn't what you leave, it's who you lift." Back then I thought it was about the foundation he created. Now I knew he meant me. I followed the paperwork, my father's money transferred into an account in my name, the shell company tied to Honora's alias, the campaign I built being credited elsewhere. Are they counting on me to forgive because I loved first? I asked myself. I love my children, I reminded myself, not the marriage that betrayed them. The connections were crisp now. Money, love, power, they weren't separate. I resolved, I was done being part of someone else's story. I would write my own. That evening I met with Levinson in his office, gray light falling through the windows. He slid a small hard drive across the desk. "Truth is heavy, but you're ready to carry it," he said. We went through the entries, the transfer slip, the contract signed under my name. Each file a thread. I kept smiling in public that night, dinner with guests, laughter, polite nods. Inside my mind I calculated. My calm had become camouflage. After dinner I retrieved the burner phone I bought weeks ago. Typing one line, "Name it when you live for yourself." I locked it and slid it into my bag. The Monaco investigation was scheduled for January. Timing mattered. They believed in silence. I would weaponize it. Home again, Talbot arrived unannounced with 2 red envelopes. One addressed to Honora's foundation, the other blank for me. "Family giving," he said. Mother praised Honora's leadership again. I stopped her. "Mom, I built that campaign behind the scenes." She just smiled. Later I watched from the hallway, the red maple napkin I once folded, tossed into a trash bin in the other room. Honora didn't notice. I did. Our house wasn't built on trust or legacy, it was built on sand. I held the blueprint. I went to Dad's study. His portrait watched. I didn't cry. That woman I used to be ended the day I signed the prenup. I wrote, "I will leave this house if I have to, but they will remember I ever lived here." I met Isolde for coffee. This time we spoke of strategy, not sorrow. "Tired is better than broken," I said. At night, an email appeared, confession_Honora_Valles_2008. I opened the video, Honora on camera. He promised the assets would be ours. "She thinks love is all we need." I leaned back. My pulse steady. I have the proof. They don't know what they've just set in motion. I arrived back at the estate just after dusk. The sky over Charleston had turned a deep slate blue, and the driveway lights led me to what I expected to be familiar doors. My meeting with Mr. Levinson had gone long, papers and coffee, decisions and whispers, and I was ready to unwind. I reached into my purse, pulled out my keys, and walked up the front steps with the routine I'd rehearsed 1,000 times. But the key refused to turn. I tried again. Nothing. I heard movement inside, the soft echo of footsteps, a laugh that didn't belong to me. My chest tightened. Earlier that day, Cormac had said, "We're upgrading the system," as if rearranging the house were no more than changing light bulbs. I peered through the window. A brand new keypad glowed. Talbot and 2 contractors stood by the door. The house I paid for existed, but I was no longer the owner. I raised my phone, filmed the keypad, zoomed into contractor badges. My whisper was quiet but fierce. "They changed the locks because they're scared I'll open the safe." I stepped away from the door, around the side toward the garden path. My father's landscaping stretched in half-light. I walked past rose bushes, hedges I'd helped plant, and came to the small raised bed I'd tended after summers of covering Cormac's late calls. The bronze tag bearing my initials was gone. Its place taken by a sign, Marin Family Garden, Talbot Lead. I knelt, touched the soil that had witnessed my hands, my care, my hope. I tasted sorrow and anger at once. They saw me as a name to be erased. In that instant I chose, I will not beg for a space I built. I will claim it. Inside my study, I spread documents across the oak desk, old client filings, property deeds, contracts bearing my name. Then newer ones, shell entities, omissions. I dialed Gideon Strath's office under an alias asking for original deeds for Marin Legacy Tower. While I waited, I logged into Leopold Voss's secure channel and opened a new Monaco account in my name. I wasn't hiding funds. I was safeguarding truth. I played my father's voice memo. If they try to erase you, leave footprints large enough to be seen in the sand. I leaned forward, set 3 folders on the desk labeled Phase 1. I told myself, they want a silent living widow. I'll be a loud legacy. Dinner that night found me across the table from Cormac and the family. Talbot spoke of leadership and Honora glowed at praise. I kept my face still. I asked casually, Talbot, when did the new key system get installed? The table froze. Talbot flushed, Evadne deflected. My eyes met Cormac's. He smiled, but not fully. After dinner I opened my laptop. Email, compliance audit scheduled for Friday. Access temporarily denied. I typed back, you might have the keys, but I have the master plan. Sleepless, I wrote in my journal, they believe I'll crack. They gave me tunnel vision. I'll walk out with daylight. The next evening I attended a gala. I smiled, greeted guests, tipped my head to familiar faces, all while mapping allies and pools of power. I gripped the red maple napkin in my clutch, its leaf shape etched into memory. Survival isn't enough. I deserve influence. Returning home, the mailbox held a small USB drive taped shut with a post-it, last chance. I plugged it in. A file, meeting_1214xx.mp3. I clicked play. Cormac's voice, let her think she's snug. Reality will hit after the closing date. My heartbeat slowed. He said closing date. They're moving tomorrow. I leaned back and said softly, the reckoning begins. I arrived at the Charleston courthouse in the early morning light. My dark coat felt right, serious, honest, unmasked. No veil. I stepped into the plaza and the scene hit me, reporters, cameras, flashes. A banner stretched across the entryway, Marin Family Trust Case. I remembered the photo hanging at the estate foyer, my face blurred, like someone had tried to erase me from the image. That memory flickered now. I walked through the press line, offered a measured smile, and said clearly, yes, I'm here to speak. I paused, took a breath where hundreds of eyes focused on me, and added, I'll simply present truth and walk away. The murmurs rose, the cameras aimed, the live feed behind the judge's bench showed Honora's face in the frame. She watched. I watched back. This moment was no longer about whispers behind closed doors. It was public. It was visible. I held myself steady. Because at this point, the truth mattered more than hiding. Inside the courtroom, I carried 2 photographs in my hand and placed them on the exhibit table with a quiet determination. One was the original family photo, my daughter's hand resting on mine, my husband next to me, the photo captured when I still believed in us. The other was the version published in company materials, exact same scene, except my face had been obscured. This is more than a photo, I told the court. It's my visibility, my place in the story. The silence that followed felt heavy. I explained how seeing my face intentionally blurred felt like living half a life, visible to everyone else, invisible where it mattered most. Talbot rose to object, his voice polite, but the judge shook his head. Exhibit admitted, he said. Camera clicks filled the room. I said softly, when you erase someone's face, you erase their voice. The words hung there. I let that moment settle. Because for once, my erasure was witnessed. My presence registered. The murmurs began to change. People shifted in their seats. The power of the moment pressed into the air. I didn't need to raise my voice. I just needed to stand. Then I played the voicemail. Years old, recorded by Honora herself. I pressed play. Her voice, clear, he promised the assets to me, not her. You just believed in him. The courtroom froze. I felt adrenaline surge. I believed in us, I said aloud. You believed in control. The dynamics shifted. This wasn't a dispute between husband and wife. It was strategic. A plan. I felt something else too, vindication. And through it, liberation. The judge nodded. The jury watched me. For years I had asked myself, why did I stand by when I could have stood up? The answer deeper than betrayal, I was erased. And this voicemail was proof. They had counted on my silence. They forgot I could speak. After the session I made my way to the gallery room inside the Marin Legacy Tower, once a trophy hall for the family firm. The exhibit cases lined the walls, gifts, awards, plaques. But now those same displays felt like evidence of a hidden truth. A former colleague came up quietly. We always knew you built it, she said. I nodded. In a corner sat Isolde. She whispered, you kept your promise. I realized then the severity of what I had built and what they claimed. I reflected on younger women I'd met, smart, capable, waiting for permission. I thought, don't wait for a seat at the table, bring your own chair. I prepared myself for what came next: Wednesday press, Monday keynote, transactions, and trust. My voice would be heard beyond this courtroom. That evening I flew out to my father's seaside villa outside Charleston. The ocean breeze carried a kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. I signed papers transferring assets into the new Venice Marin Foundation. The media might speak of divorce Victor, but I knew differently. I wasn't fighting them, I was freeing myself. My father's voice echoed back, you can't rescue everyone. Rescue yourself first. Today I was doing exactly that. I prepared a keynote for a real estate summit in Monaco titled, Legacy Beyond Empire. No one else's story now. They used to write it. I do. Late that night the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A bank executive from Monaco spoke, Ms. Marin, the wire is confirmed. 700 million cleared. I smiled quietly. I told them I was ready, I said. I gazed at the red maple napkin I'd carried through this whole storm. Outside the windows the wind picked up, pulling at the curtains. I locked the door, headed for my suitcase. They thought I'd left the game. I wasn't even seated yet. I stepped off the private jet in Monaco and fought the cool Mediterranean breeze with resolve. The sun glinted off the harbor, white yachts bobbing like silent witnesses. I wore a tailored coat, simple but authoritative, no frills, just purpose. The white envelope rested heavy in my tote. Unopened. Unclaimed, or perhaps waiting. I thought, envelope unopened or unclaimed still carries fate. I walked into the summit lobby, recognizing familiar faces, Honora, sleek and controlled, Talbot, in conversation with investors as if the world still revolved around their version of things. They glanced at me. I tucked the red maple napkin into my jacket pocket, a subtle reminder I carried from Charleston. I whispered to myself, you gave me vantage point. I'll give myself a podium. The moment felt larger than the room. I wasn't guest anymore. I was participant. The summit hall filled quickly. Chairs aligned, lights softened, and the MC announced, a special message for Ms. Marin. My heart stilled. When the envelope was handed to me, I paused in front of an audience used to seeing brides and wives, not women reclaiming power. I peeled open the white flap. Inside, share certificates transferring major shares into the Marin Legacy Foundation, my name printed clearly as the beneficiary. Shock rippled across the room. Honora's color drained, Talbot's jaw set. I held the sheets up briefly, then said calmly, "It seems my name matters after all." Applause began, tentative, then stronger. Their mistake gave me proof. While the world watched, I made my pivot. My turn. My voice. The envelope was their error and my ascension. Later, floating on the deck of a yacht anchored near Monaco, the city lights shimmering like fireflies, I replayed the boardroom mistake, the blank line on the shareholder form, Talbot's approval. I had discovered the signature, mine, from 2009, but the beneficiary had been me, not them. I recalled Cormac's voice, "Give her something to keep her quiet." Now I understood the cost of their hubris. I leaned on the deck railing. The sea breeze tangled my hair as I whispered, "Men who build empires on shadows lose when the lights switch on." Their misstep became my power, exposure turned into vindication. The water held my reflection steady. I felt neither triumph nor rage, just clarity. At the after-party, I spotted Marceline Quain, the secretary turned silent shareholder. She handed me a sealed USB. Inside was the ledger, 12% of shares transferred from Cormac's shell to her name, signed without my knowledge. The crowd watched as I thanked her out loud, "Welcome to the leadership table." Surprise rippled. I looked at the room and said quietly, "Your rise doesn't diminish mine, they tried to erase mine. They elevated yours. I'll use yours to anchor mine." The shift in atmosphere was almost palpable. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine, I was reshaping the ecosystem. As midnight approached, I stepped aboard the yacht decked in deep blue waves. I pulled out the red maple napkin and handed it to Isolde. "Keep this until I no longer need reminders," I said. The city skyline glowed behind. I raised a champagne glass, to new beginnings that weren't asked, they were earned. My phone buzzed, Cormac texted, "See you at the Charleston Gala next month." I replied with a simple emoji. No words. Just movement. The past's noise dimmed. I walked out into the night air, suitcase in hand, freedom in my pocket. The next morning my phone pinged with a banking notification, wire transfer approved, $700 million to Venice Marin Foundation account. I sat on the bow of the yacht, sea breeze cold against my cheek, looking at the horizon. I whispered, "They bet I'd beg." Instead I banked. They counted losses, they counted mine first. The city behind me faded, ahead, the open water stretched. I felt grounded. Ready. They thought I left the game. I wasn't leaving, I was already in first class. The harbor was still as glass that morning. I sat on the deck, fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug of black coffee. The air was cool, but not biting. There was a weightlessness in the breeze that hadn't been there before. I watched the sunrise spill across the water, slow and sure, like it knew exactly where it was going. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to chase it. I pulled out an old photo album from under the bench. I hadn't touched it in over a decade. One photo fell out, a younger me, standing between Honora and Cormac, arms draped around each other's shoulders like we actually believed it would last. I traced my finger across our faces. That version of us was gone. I closed the book. "It's not forgetting that heals," I said softly to no one. "It's choosing what you carry forward." The red maple napkin sat framed on the table beside me. I'd had it pressed under glass, next to a vase of white orchids. It didn't represent grief anymore. Just memory. I took a long breath. No more rage. Just range. The gala was scheduled for that evening, and I was expected. But this time, it wasn't about appearances. I slipped into a sapphire dress, not loud, not sharp. Just calm, steady. I wore a foundation ring on my right hand, a symbol of what had been built, not taken. In the car, Isolde sat quietly beside me, reviewing notes. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't excited either. Just present. We went over the launch of the VM Legacy Grant. Grants for single mothers in business. My request was simple. My opening quote had to be, "When they underestimate you, exceed quietly." I pressed my fingers to the lining of my clutch. Inside was the first check, signed this morning. A signature that finally meant something. At the gala, beneath warm lights and a velvet canopy, I saw him, Cormac. His presence was a blur in the corner of my vision at first, like a memory that hadn't fully left. He was thinner, quieter, dressed well but no longer golden. He approached. I didn't flinch. "I came to say sorry," he said. I looked him in the eye. "I didn't come here to be apologized to. I came to live." He paused. "Is there any chance we could talk?" "You spent your chances," I said. "I spent mine building exits." He reached into his coat and handed me a book. The Fountainhead. A copy we once read together. I took it. "No, thank you." As he walked away, I didn't feel hatred. Or closure. I whispered, more to myself than him, forgiveness isn't a reunion. It's an untethering. Later that night, I stood at the podium. Spotlights didn't feel invasive anymore. They felt earned. "We don't rebuild on ruins," I began. "We build beside them. Stronger. Wiser." I didn't speak of betrayal. I spoke of rebuilding. The crowd, mostly older women, quietly nodded, some with tears, some with clenched jaws. They knew. "We're launching retreats for women over 60, I said. To start again. Not despite age, but because of it. I quoted Maya Angelou, "Still, like dust, I'll rise." I lifted the grant check for all to see. Then called Isolde forward. She didn't smile much, but tonight, she did. "We don't wait for justice," I finished. "We make legacy." Back home, I lit a single candle. Its flame flickered beside an unopened envelope from Honora. I'd found it weeks ago, tucked between legal folders. I never opened it. I didn't need to. "Some stories deserve no ending," I said aloud. "Just distance." I opened my journal and wrote my final entry. Today I stopped rewriting the past. I started rereading myself. I closed it, labeled The Spine, Volume 1, Before the Sky Opened. I looked in the mirror, not at my reflection, but at the quiet behind my eyes. It wasn't survival anymore. It was sovereignty. The villa phone rang. Isolde picked it up, then looked at me. "It's Geneva. They want you to speak at the World Women's Wealth Council. Topics already set, turning betrayal into blueprint." I exhaled. "Tell them yes." She hesitated. "1 or 2 seats?" "2, I said. I want you to see the sky from above the clouds, too."